And thank you everyone for joining us tonight and welcome. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping rules. The fire is that way and bathrooms are outside. My name is Dania, and on behalf of the International Center of Justice for Palestinians and the Red Ribbons campaign, I would like to welcome you all to this important discussion. For those who may be unfamiliar with our work, the International Center of Justice for Palestinians is an independent organization of lawyers, academics, politicians, working to promote and support the rights of Palestinians wherever they might be. We are also proud to be joined by the Red Ribbons campaign, which is dedicated to raising awareness about Palestinians held in Israeli detention facilities and ensuring that their stories are heard globally. Before we move into tonight's discussion, I want to take a moment to reflect on why we are here. When people speak about Palestinian detainees, the conversation is often reduced to numbers. Thousands detained, thousands of families waiting for answers, statistics that can make it easy to forget the human beings behind them. But Palestinian detainees are not numbers. They are people, like you and me. People with families, with loved ones, with dreams and futures. People whose lives have been interrupted, whose families live with uncertainty, and whose experiences behind prison walls are often hidden from the world. Documented testimonies from Palestinian prisoners and detainees have described severe and arbitrary violence, sexual assault, humiliation and degradation, deliberate starvation, sleep deprivation, denial of adequate medical treatment, and the systematic stripping away of basic human dignity. These testimonies reveal repeated patterns of abuse across detention facilities. Conditions where suffering is described not as an exception, but as part of a wider system. Conditions in which detainees have described experiencing extreme physical and psychological harm, and detention spaces that have been described as functioning not only as prisons, but as torture camps. And behind every testimony is a person whose story deserves to be heard, a person whose humanity cannot be reduced to a statistic. These detainees now face a new wave of intensified measures. Recently, Israel passed the death penalty legislation. Before the eyes of the world, we continue to witness Israel violating fundamental rights and principles in the most appalling of ways, all before the eyes of the world and the international community, and protected with a system of entrenched impunity. Tonight's panel brings together individuals with legal expertise, lived experiences, and frontline knowledge to examine the realities of Israeli detention policies and the death penalty, and to discuss the urgent questions of justice, accountability, and human rights. Our aim this evening is not only to inform, but to create space for reflection, discussion, and action. So thank you for being here and for joining us for this important panel. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Adnan Hmidan, coordinator of the Red Ribbons campaign.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are here today for an important and fair cause. The Palestinian hostages in Israeli prisons, they are not just names or numbers. They are real people with dreams, love for their families, and strong hope. Sadly, their whole lives are affected by imprisonment and occupation. Many Palestinians live between checkpoints, walls, and restrictions in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza as open prison. And some of them, thousands of them, convert to the closed prisons. So all of them in prisons. We use the word hostages, not prisoners, hostages, because these people are often used as a way to put pressure on the Palestinian community. They use our kids, doctors, women to put pressure in our society. And so the family tell their young people, please don't be resistant, don't fight, don't be against the occupation. We need peace. Look what happened with your child. Look what happened for your mom. Look what happened for. So make this all the community under that pressure. This includes brave journalists who wanted to tell the truth, university students who wanted a better future, and doctors who worked to save lives, such as Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya and more than 15 doctors, as well as 150 medical workers. It also includes around 350 children who should be learning and playing at the school, and about 90, sometimes 100 women who are separated from their children and families. They are kept in prison for political reasons, losing valuable years of their lives and many of their dreams. Inside these prisons, many faces harsh treatment and handcuff. Those who are released often look very weak because of what they have suffered. Others don't survive and die in prison, leaving their families in deep sadness. In addition, there are efforts to use death penalty laws against some of them. At the same time, we call for freedom for all hostages. Many Palestinians in prison are administrative detainees. This means they are held without trial and without being formally accused of a crime. They don't know when they will return home or see their families. So we had the Red Ribbon Campaign. The Red Ribbon Campaign began in October 2025. They released, if you remember, 2,000 of the Palestinian prisoners and hostages. Then they left 9,000 in the prisons. So we ask ourselves what we can do for them. The people inside Palestine can't do anything now. So it is our duty, all of us duty. So we try to make a global movement called Red Ribbon Campaign. What the idea of Red Ribbon Campaign? We believed it was our responsibility to start a global campaign for them, together with the International Center of Justice for Palestinians, ICJP. We wear the red ribbon as a sign that urgent action is needed. Please keep this red ribbon to remember ourselves. It is close to our hearts. It's need urgent action. The red color for the urgency, the red color for their bloods, for their freedom. Together, we can make something different. It is a message to the world to act now, especially because the International Red Cross has not been able to visit them since October 2023. These red ribbons were created for them, and they will continue to represent them. Our work will continue. This red ribbon is a promise that we will not stay silent. We will keep working until every hostage and every detainee is free, and until they receive their right and dignity. We will continue until justice is achieved, and until Palestinian and all Palestinians, until Palestine and all Palestinians are free. Thank you for supporting justice.
Thank you, Mr. Adnan, for your very important words and for all the important work that you are doing. I would like to introduce now our moderator for the evening, Matilda Mallinson, award-winning journalist and presenter, currently working with Middle East Eye. She has her own podcast called Media Storm, and she was on the Fritella in 2025.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thank you. Hi. Thank you all for choosing to give tonight to this topic of all topics. My name is Matilda. I'll be your host for this evening. Before I introduce you to our 5 panelists, I just want to give you a little layover of how tonight is going to go. For the next hour and a quarter or so, we will have a panel discussion, nothing to see on screen. We'll ask, what is the problem with this death penalty law we're here to talk about? How did we get here? How does it fit into this wider pattern of intensification in Israel? And what is working and what isn't working with the international Palestine solidarity movement. I'm then going to open the floor to questions for half an hour, so please gather your questions as we go. And we'll close with a 15-minute focus group on what tonight is really about, which is what do we do next? So allow me to introduce you to the 5 people who have come to speak to you tonight. Tayeb Ali is one of the UK's leading specialists in international and criminal law. He's here with the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians, ICJP, which, along with the Red Ribbons campaign, have gathered us here together tonight. Now, ICJP has submitted sanctions recommendations to the UK Foreign Office around this death penalty law, so that will be one of the focus of tonight's discussion. Tayeb, do you want to join me? Dr. Mustafa Balkuti is a physician and evidently one of the most recognizable figures in Palestinian political life. General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative, he's a member of the Palestinian Parliament and a lifelong advocate for non-violent resistance to the occupation. He'll help us understand the politics behind the law.
Thank you.
Who's next? Saif Abu Kushek is a Spanish Palestinian activist. I myself have sailed alongside him on board the Global Summer Flotilla, of which he is one of the organizers. In spring, Saif was abducted in international waters and held in Israeli detention for 11 days. He's here to share what he's witnessed of Israel's carceral and justice system and the propaganda machine that defends it. Next, we have Khalid Mkhajna, who is a lawyer and human rights advocate. Khalid represents Palestinian hostages inside Israeli prisons. He's here to take us inside those walls. He'll be speaking to us in Arabic with the help of Dania. Dania, thank you so much. And finally, Catriona Graham is an Irish activist. And she has also been detained for trying to get aid into Gaza by sea. Many of you will have seen footage released by none other than Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, showing Catriona being forced to the ground for shouting "Free Palestine" in the face of one of the key agents of the occupation. An extraordinary act of bravery and one that drew international attention and condemnation of the tactics of humiliation and degradation that Israel clearly employs in its prisons. She's here to share her witness observations and what we, ordinary people, can do to enact change. Right, let's get to it. The first question is, what's the problem? In March, members of the Knesset, Israel's parliament, passed around champagne as they voted into law the death penalty for terrorists law by 62 votes to 47. That's what we're here to talk about. Tayeb, will you tell us why? What exactly is so alarming about this new law?
Well, let's just start where you left off, Matilda. Can you imagine a situation where a politician decides that it's appropriate to celebrate something as grave as a criminal punishment, regardless of where it is, what it is, or let alone being something which actively is designed to take someone's life? Celebrating that with cakes, celebrating that with holding a noose up in the air in Parliament, with opening bottles of champagne is something which defines where this law starts. Because when you decide to take someone's life, particularly as in a conflict or even as a punishment for criminal wrongdoing, that should be something which doesn't fill someone's heart with happiness. And that in itself is a starting point as to what's wrong with this. This is clearly not designed as a deterrent or something designed to punish criminal wrongdoing. It's really designed to satiate individuals and their thirst for punishing and subjugating and ethnically cleansing Palestinians. It's just another formula. So let me just answer your question a little bit more directly, Matilda. What's wrong with the actual legislation? So it's the first time in modern history, and I tried to find something similar to this, but it's the first time in modern history that a state has legislated to kill a particular group of people only as a punishment at the end of a criminal process or a pseudo-criminal process. And let me move on to that. And what is that criminal process? Well, in this legislation itself is discriminatory by design. And what I mean by that is that it's designed with the wording to only impact on one group of people, and that's residents of the West Bank. The language used in the legislation is Judea and Samaria, but we know what that means. It means Palestinian residents of the West Bank. And what that means in the converse of that is it does not apply to Jewish people in that region. It immediately creates two separate tracks, one for Palestinians and one for Jewish people in that region. And what's also important is the law itself. If that wasn't bad enough, it creates a mandatory death penalty. And what that means is that it's not left to a court to decide whether the law should be applied, the death penalty should be applied to an individual. It just automatically will be. And who are the individuals that this will be applied to? By the way, applying a mandatory death penalty is in itself unlawful because it becomes inherently arbitrary. So it just means you don't look at the particular circumstances of that individual. You have to put that person to execution. It strips the safeguards. So the gallows of Israel, believe it or not, the legal gallows of Israel have been empty for 60 years. And when I say the legal gallows, people have been killed in detention. That's something separate. But in terms of people being put to death for 60 years, people haven't been being put to death in Israel. Now, in this circumstance, a majority decision of 2 of 3 military judges will make the determination as to whether a person should be executed or not. And just imagine this. You have this legal process, and the person is not just condemned to death, but they have to be executed within 90 days, 3 months. That's so rapid. That doesn't leave time for an appeal. It doesn't leave time for reconsideration. Reconsideration and appeal have been effectively removed from this. So it strips the safeguards. But in any event, who's going to be convicted? The people subject to the conviction are subject to a military tribunal. You're talking about a 90 to 99% conviction rate. A tribunal where evidence that wouldn't be allowed in a regular criminal proceeding, evidence obtained from torture, evidence arranged by coercion, evidence from children, evidence potentially from the infirm, will be allowable in that process. It's the complete opposite of what happens in any proper legal system. In a proper legal system, where the allegations are high and grave, and where the punishment is severe, life imprisonment, for example, let alone a death penalty, you need to put more safeguards in place, not less. And so, in essence, what the Israeli Knesset have done is created a law which makes it lawful for them to murder Palestinians and Palestinians alone.
Precisely.
Thank you, Tayyab. I think there's one other law which we should clarify here. In May, a second law was passed by Israel imposing mass public trials on the roughly 300 Palestinians detained and accused of charges relating to October the 7th. This week, Israel began construction on a giant court complex for these tribunals. Legally, how much integrity do you expect these trials to have?
Yeah, so it is important to distinguish the two. And can I just say, really, the only way I can encapsulate what I call the May situation, the May legislation, is that it's propaganda. It's show trials. You're not going to have a system of investigation or inquiry or judicial scrutiny over what actually happened on October the 7th. What you're going to have is a system where the narrative from effectively Netanyahu and his inner circle will be displayed through what is a pseudo-legal process. The judges are going to be military appointees. They're not going to be independent judges. And again, they will deviate entirely from the normal rules of evidence and procedure. So coercion and torture is again going to be admissible in that process. But it's something I can say about the detainee population, the prisoner population, the hostage population within Israel is simply this. We now know that detainees are routinely and systematically tortured, including being raped. Now, in those circumstances, you can imagine that the detainees are likely under duress to say whatever the torturer wants them to say. That's the evidence that's going to formulate this May process. But I just want to say one thing. If you consider me to be politically motivated as a human rights lawyer, which I am politically motivated as a human rights lawyer to protect human rights, let's look at what other people have to say about it. And let's look at what the October Council have to say about it. The October Council is a group of what they describe themselves as Israeli October the 7th survivors and bereaved family members. This group stands against this show trial too. And what they want is they want the truth about what happened on October the 7th. And that's why what they're asking for is a commission of inquiry. There is a good reason why Israel does not want there to be a commission of inquiry, because they don't want the truth to come out. They want their propaganda to come out.
And in that context, it's interesting to note that this particular law passed by 93 votes to 0 in the Israeli Knesset. I think 27 abstained or were absent. Khalid, we've heard what the law says. Can you tell us what it really means for individuals from the detainees that you speak to? What has the psychological impact of the death penalty law been for Palestinian prisoners and their families?
كيف بأثر على الأسرى؟
تمام. طيب
شخصية.
مساء الخير للجميع وشكرا على الاستضافة، وبالفعل فرصة والحديث عن واحد من أهم المواضيع والقضايا اليوم اللي بتتعلق في الأسرى في السجون الإسرائيلية. ونتحدث أنا عن أسرى فلسطينيين، أسرى لبنانيين، وأسرى سوريين في السجون الإسرائيلية. هذا القانون عمليا جاء مش من فراغ، هذا القانون جاء امتداد للحرب التي شنتها إسرائيل منذ 7 أكتوبر وما زالت مستمرة حتى هذا اليوم بحق الأسرى. بالفعل حرب بكل معنى هذه الكلمة الفظيعة. إسرائيل منذ اليوم الأول بداية الحرب على غزة بدأت بشن حرب إجرامية بتفاصيل تفوق كل المنطق والخيال.
Can everyone hear me? Okay. Thank you everyone for coming to this panel. It's a very important one. Today I'll be talking about the situation of detainees. This is truly such a difficult topic to speak about. But since the 7th of October, Israel has extended its war to include those detainees, and it's a war with the true meaning of the word war that is happening against Palestinian, Syrian, and Lebanese detainees since the 7th of October.
يعني أولا إسرائيل ليست بحاجة لقانون من أجل أن تقوم بإعدام الأسرى الفلسطينيين بالسجون. أنا أؤمن بهذا الشيء. أنا محامي أعمل في هذا المجال في المحاكم الإسرائيلية. أنا أدخل يوميا إلى السجون الإسرائيلية كمحامي، وأدخل وأخرج من هذه السجون حامل شهادات تفاصيل التعذيب والتنكيل والاغتصاب وبتر الأطراف وإعدام الأسرى. فإسرائيل ليست بحاجة لقانون من أجل أن تقوم بإعدام الأسرى. منذ 7 أكتوبر سقط أكثر من 100 شهيد من هم معروف هوياتهم وأسمائهم وتفاصيلهم، ولكن الأعداد تفوق كل هذه الأرقام، بالذات المخفين قسريا من قطاع غزة.
I want to clarify that I'm speaking as a lawyer who is going into Israeli detention facilities on daily basis, coming out of it with really heavy testimonies of those detained in these facilities. What I wanted to say as well, what I want to preface this with, is Israel does not need a law to impose the death penalty on Palestinians. the harrowing testimonies that we've seen from the amputations, the killings of detained people in detention facilities. We have over 100 martyrs that we know the identities of that have been killed in Israeli detention facilities. However, there are immense numbers of many, many more people who have lost their lives that we don't know the identities of, specifically the ones who have been subjected to enforced disappearances.
هذا القانون عمليا مبكي، الأسرى أكثر من 10,000 أسير معزولين كليا عن العالم الخارجي، لا يلتقون لا أبنائهم ولا زوجاتهم ولا آبائهم ولا حتى مؤسسات دولية مثل الصليب الأحمر، يبقيهم في حالة من الخوف والموت المنتظر. عدا ما يمارس بحقهم مهنيا، هم ينتظرون حتفهم في أي لحظة. نحن هنا نتحدث عن الأسرى، ولكن ممكن أن نستمع إلى استشهاد وإعدام شهيد داخل السجون الإسرائيلية في أي لحظة. فيبقي الأسرى في حالة خوف، ويبقي عائلات الأسرى الذين لا يعرفون مسؤول أبنائهم أصلا في حالة من الخوف والانتظار لأي معلومة أو خبر تتعلق بأبنائهم.
This law keeps more than 10,000 Palestinian detainees completely segregated from the outer world. It also creates this state of fear while they wait for their destiny. And it also creates fear not only for the detainees, but also for these families that are scared for the lives of their relatives and those detained inside of detention facilities.
هذا القانون عمل منجاء لأن تقول إسرائيل أنها تتحدى العالم، وبالفعل تتحدى العالم مع صنع هذا القانون، أنها تفعل ما تشاء بدون رقيب ولا حسيب. فهذا القانون عمليا جاء من أجل منع، حسب الرواية الإسرائيلية، أي نشاط لمقاومة الاحتلال. تعتقد إسرائيل أن هذا القوانين ممكن أن تحد من مقاومة الاحتلال المستمرة عمليا منذ عام 48، والتي سوف تستمر حتى تحرير الأرض والإنسان. هذا القانون عمليا من الناحية القانونية يسم بالكنيس الإسرائيلي ودخل حيز التنفيذ مع نهاية شهر آذار عام 2026 أن كل إنسان فلسطيني من الضفة الغربية، القدس، أو أي منطقة عربية في هذا الكون يقوم بعملية وتكون الضحية فيها يهودي إسرائيلي، هذا هو المعيار، يهودي إسرائيلي، المقتول سوف يعدم. هكذا إسرائيل سنت هذا القانون. وهناك قانون آخر يجب أن نعرج عليه، قانون إعدام أسرى قطاع غزة الموجودين في السجون.
This law came from Israel as a challenge to the world. It is trying to tell the world that it does what it wants as it wishes to do so, and that no one can actually control the actions of Israel as a state. The law, according to the Israeli narrative, is to basically limit any activity to resist the occupation. And Israel believes that these laws would actually limit the resistance to the occupation that has started since the year 1948. But in my opinion, it won't, because this resistance will go on until the land is freed. In 2026, this law came into power. And basically, the easiest interpretation of it would be that every Palestinian that does any act of resistance and this is the standard according to the law, every Palestinian person who does any operation where the victim is Jewish Israeli will be subjected to this law.
والقانون الآخر يتعلق بأسرى غزة. الحديث يدور عن 400 أسير معتقلين منذ 7 من أكتوبر، مخفيون عن وجه الأرض، معزولين كليا عن العالم الخارجي. تعتقد إسرائيل أن هؤلاء الأسرى دخلوا إلى غلاف غزة وقاموا بعمليات مقاومة في إسرائيل، وتريد إسرائيل إعدامهم. ولذلك سن الكنيسة مؤخرا هذا القانون بدون محاكمات، بدون تهم واضحة، بدون محاكمة عادلة نهائيا، بدون أي شبهة. ولكن هذا القانون سن من أجل الانتقام من أهالي غزة، من الأسرى، من أهاليهم.
There's also another legislation that I would like to speak about, which is the legislation that is relevant to the detainees of Gaza. There are more than 400 detainees that Israel had detained on the 7th of October that have completely disappeared from the face of this earth. They have been completely segregated from the outer world. No one knows anything about them. And Israel believes that these are the people that have actually gotten to outside of Gaza and conducted the acts of the 7th of October. What Israel aims to achieve with this law is to impose the death penalty on these detainees without proper trials, without any clear allegations towards them. And the main purpose of this is vengeance from the people of Gaza.
وأنهي في هذا الجانب بخصوص قانون الإعدام وتأثيره على الأسرى وأهالي الأسرى. على الرغم من أن هذا القانون يمكن أن ينهي حياة إنسان، ولكن ما يمارس بحق الأسرى داخل السجون لا يكل فظاعة وإجرام. إسرائيل تقوم باغتصاب أسرى، تقوم باغتصاب أسيرات من نساء من قطاع غزة، تقوم ببتر أطراف أسرى، تقوم بالتنكيل بالأسرى يوميا. هناك أسرى لم يأكلوا منذ أشهر وأيام وأشهر، هناك أسرى لم يبجل ملابسهم. كل هذه التفاصيل لا تقل إجراما وفظاعة عن إعدام وإنهاء حياة شخص.
And even though this law actually intends to bring death upon these detainees, what detained Palestinians go through in detention facilities is no less horrifying than the death penalty. What is actually being conducted on detainees, from the rape of detained individuals, detained men, detained women, the amputation of their limbs, all the horrifying and heinous acts of exactly what is happening to them. There are detained Palestinians who haven't eaten in days and months. There are people who haven't changed any of their clothes. So basically, this law is hideous on its own, but also is no less hideous than what is happening against those detained Palestinians.
Thank you, Khalid. Thank you, Danya. Now it is. Thank you. Thank you. Now, it is for these reasons that the Palestinian rights group Al-Haq argues this death penalty law should be looked at as an act of genocide in itself. And on this wider question of international illegality, Tayyab, I personally am confused about what jurisdiction Israel even holds extraterritorially over occupied Palestine that is viewed internationally as illegally occupied Palestine. Can you clear that up?
Yeah, so I mean, it's important to the characterization of Gaza and the West Bank is straightforward. It's a occupied territory, and what that means is that during a conflict, a military side can seize control of an area of land and lawfully occupy it. Now, a lawful occupation is required to achieve certain military characteristics, but it has characteristics of itself. And one of the main characteristics that make this occupation unlawful is that a occupation should be temporary in nature. It's designed to administer a region without interrupting it, without de-administrating it for a temporary period of time until the military forces can withdraw from that region and return it to the people that live there. Now, that's not just my simple legal definition of what an occupation is. This is a belligerent occupation, meaning that Israel holds the land aggressively at will and with the population at risk of being killed arbitrarily. The ICJ advisory opinion in July 2024 declared that to be an unlawful occupation. Now, what does the IC... Now, I use the word advisory opinion, and it's important for me to clarify that because lots of people are confused about what advisory opinion means, but more so, people are purposefully misled about what an advisory opinion means. An ICJ advisory opinion is not advice. It is the world's most senior court telling you what the settled position in international law is. And what that means is that domestically, other states have to follow that law. And that's what that means. It's just, for example, if there's a legal argument in the United Kingdom court, the United Kingdom court has to give deference to that advisory opinion and say, well, the ICJ has determined what the law is. So, for example, they'd have to declare the occupation to be unlawful too. And what does the occupation being unlawful mean? It means that Israel can't annex the land. It can't keep it for itself. It can't administer new law for the people in that land. And what that means is that this law, the administration of it over those people in the occupation or in the occupied territories, is in itself unlawful. So, putting it bluntly, Israel has no jurisdiction to create administer laws for the people in Gaza or the West Bank. And actually, the laws that apply to the people in Gaza and the West Bank are the Gazan law and West Bank law, Palestinian law for the people there. And so that the simple answer is it has no ability to do this.
Thank you, Tayyip. Now, Israeli lawmakers have justified this law on the grounds of deterrence, that this will deter crime and protect Israeli life. But of course, Palestinians already face some of the harshest, most draconian deterrence mechanisms in place. This is clearly not about deterring crime. Mustafa, what is it about? What is Israel's real goal here?
Well, thank you. I think we've heard very important legal opinions, but I'd like to touch on the political aspect of why we are facing these laws. First of all, as was said, this is another step in consolidation of the system of apartheid. Apartheid is clear. Apartheid is two systems of laws for two people living in the same area. We have had that since 1967. We have had that even in 1948 areas. And I think the work of Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International was very useful in clarifying that apartheid is reflected not only on Palestinians in the occupied territories, but also on Palestinians in 1948 areas, as well as Palestinians in the diaspora, who are, by not allowing Palestinians to come back to their homeland, they are practicing apartheid while they are collecting people from all over the world, if they are Jewish and if they are Israeli supporters. So that is one very important point politically, that these two new laws do consolidate the system of apartheid and expose it more clearly. Especially when it comes to this issue of if you are a Palestinian, you are subjected to the law of execution. If you are not Israeli Palestinian, you are not, even if you commit the same crime. So it's very blunt, very clear. Second, I think this law reflects the level of deep Israeli public attitude towards revenge. They want to take revenge from Palestinians. They want to take revenge from the fact that they have failed. I imagine their leaders, and to be honest, also some racist Western leaders, who sit down after 7th of October and think, how could these Palestinians who are besieged, who are Muslims, who are Arabs, Muslims or Christians, because Palestinians are Muslims and Christians, how could these people who have been besieged, deprived of everything, could even manage to plan resistance? How could they defeat the intelligence Israeli system? This is deep down in the blood of the Israeli society, that their feeling of supremacy, their feeling of domination was injured by Palestinian resistance. So I think big part of what we see here is the act, is the revenge. Like exactly what Ben-Gvir said yesterday, after 4 Israeli soldiers were killed in Lebanon. He said, if for every Israeli woman crying, there should be 1,000 Lebanese women crying. We should erase to the ground. We should put the whole of Lebanon on fire. Well, they are in war. What do they expect? They expect not to have any Israeli killed while they are killing thousands of people. Look, this very deep racist feeling that they are not supposed, they have to be they have to have full impunity. They have to fight a war, kill thousands of people, and not suffer any injury. So, in my opinion, this side of the law is very important, and it's important to know that. Third, these two laws have reflected how deep the move in Israel towards fascism has gone. We are not talking about the government being fascist. We are not talking only about Smotrich and Ben-Gvir becoming fascist. We are talking about very dangerous fascist tendency in the Israeli society. And if I was an Israeli, I would be so worried because that fascism will eat them up too. I mean, it leaves nobody. I've never seen anything like that, this kind of transformation at the level of society since Nazi Germany, maybe. And I think it is very alarming to the whole world that you have these strong fascist tendencies prevailing at the level of society. Fourth, I think the declaration of these, and when I say fascism, of course, when 93 Israeli Knesset members out of 110 Jewish Israeli members vote for the law, including the government and the opposition, that shows you that we are talking about a very serious common trend. Fourth, and that might surprise you, I think the fact that they passed this law is not a sign of strength, but a sign of weakness. They feel weak, and they try to affirm their strength by passing such horrible and indiscriminate laws. Fifth, I think this whole thing about the second law regarding regarding execution of the people from Gaza, the prisoners from Gaza, is Israel's other effort to convince themselves first and try to convince the world with the wrong narrative about what happened really. First of all, this law, which is they are trying to create now a special court similar in their mind to Nuremberg court. In that, they are trying to achieve two things. First, they're trying to say they are the victims and Palestinians are the aggressors. And they are the victims, and these Palestinians are like Nazis, and that's why they're taking them to something similar to the Nuremberg court. But at the same time, I think they are trying to create a victory that never happened. Because Nuremberg was about a closure of defeat of Nazism, a closure of defeat of fascism. And I think here they are trying to convince themselves that if they conduct this court and kill and execute these 400 Palestinians, they are sort of concluding that they were victorious in their imagination of what happened. But also, as was said, it's a way of justifying field execution, which already took place in Gaza. I think I don't have the number, and Khalid probably doesn't have the number, but we believe there are hundreds of Palestinians who were caught, field executed, buried, and nobody knows about them. I know one story, I will be quick. One story of a colleague of mine who was a nurse working for medical relief. He told us that in December 23, he was arrested with about 100 other people. And they were gathered in Tel el-Hawa inside Gaza. And they were gathered, and then officers came and said, we will put lights on you. If you get a white light, go home. If you get a yellow light, go to the side. And if you get a red light for interrogation, and if you get a red light, you go to the other side. Without checking who they were or without checking their IDs, 16 people were taken aside under the red light, and in front of everybody, they were executed. No trial, no judgment, no even interrogation. One of them told me 2 of them were his cousins. And one of them was actually working for the Palestinian Authority security apparatus. He wasn't even in any way related to Hamas, for instance. So these laws are trying to justify these crimes that should be investigated one day. And finally, I think you should look at these 2 laws as part of the Israeli extermination policy against the Palestinian people, which includes not only killing and genocide and continuing the bombardment of Gaza, but also includes their main goal, which I believe is the main goal we should defeat, which is the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, whether in Gaza or West Bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Eb. I'm going to ask you to be quick here, but it's a question that's come up, had a lot in conversations I've had. I think there's a lot of fear that this law could be weaponized to essentially eliminate Palestinian leaders. Israel has always used the prison system to suppress any viable alternative leadership to the colonial occupation. The main name that comes to people's mind is, of course, Marwan Barghouti. The law, in theory, cannot be retroactively applied. Is there any way legally that Israel could go from here to that situation?
Yeah, I'll be quick, but does the law matter so much anymore? Legally, no, the law can't retrospectively be applied to Marwan Barghouti. But my worry for Marwan Barghouti is not the law; it's everything despite the law. In fact, I mean, you have Ben Gvir filming himself in Barghouti's cell, showing him a photo of an electric chair, telling him this is your fate. I mean, that's real. That happened. We know from Marwan's lawyers that he suffered fractures, bleeding. A dog was set on him in his cell. He suffers from solitary confinement and near starvation. Israel's demonstrated in Gaza, despite the law, despite International Criminal Court arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant, they are prepared to kill at will, without due process, without law. My concern really here is that they don't need law to kill detainees in Israeli prisons. They'll just do it despite that. And Marwan Barghouti is at risk of being killed in prison. Doesn't matter what the law says.
Don't forget that when they can't shoot somebody, they might poison, which they have done to many Palestinian leaders.
Okay, the next question we need to ask is, how did we get here? I'm going to work from the inside out, inside Israel, out onto the international stage. So, Mustafa, we'll start with you looking at the political situation inside Israel. We have to acknowledge that in essentially reintroducing the death penalty, Israel is going against the macro global trend of abolition. How did Israel get here politically? Who are the key agents driving this intensification?
Zionism. Zionism is a racist ideology.
I suppose.
And I don't care if they call this anti-Semitism, because it is not.
So would you say it's
So please.
would you say it's not so much a question of individual politicians? It's more
No,
systemic?
it's both. It's both, because you are talking about a very racist ideology that consider us all goyim. Goyim, what does goyim mean? Means a foreigner, a person that you can kill, using false Talmudic statements and so on to justify all of that. So by definition, immediately we as Palestinians are goyim. I mean, they can do anything to us. They can rape us, they can kill us, they can shoot us, and it's okay. So that is, of course, the context. But in general, also certain fascist individuals in the Israeli system were pushing in this direction, like Ben Gvir, like Smotrich. And a very important factor that people forget is that how much terrorist settlers have become an important part of the political structure. You are talking now about 850,000 Israeli settlers who represent the political base of the growing fascism in Israel. And so it's a combination of these factors. What helped them more is that after 7th of October, you have this tremendous spread of revenge feeling that made many politicians go in that direction. But also Israel gave up the whole idea of trying to claim that it is a democracy. They don't care. They don't care. What they want is total impunity, regardless of who they are. So we are talking, that's why I say nobody should underestimate how much Israel has shifted in the direction of fascism.
Now, Thank you. Now, information warfare is the next thing I want to talk about, because I think you are right clearly that Israel's international reputation has become of less relevance to them. Nevertheless, Israel's propaganda machine is highly sophisticated. They have proven very effective at preventing realities from coming to light, at discrediting people who speak out against them. Saif, the Global Summit Flotilla is very, very well familiar with this machine. It's one of the main fronts that you have to fight this information war. What have you come to understand about that machine, and how effective do you think it still is at protecting Israel from real scrutiny?
Um, I'll pick up from what Dr. Mustafa said at the end. At this point, Israel, they don't care about the image as much as the complicity of countries that are allowing Israel to do what they are doing. It's shocking how people, countries, and governments are still surprised with behaviors that Israel is doing. Like, when you look at that, when we have seen our colleagues after they were released, and the torture and the treatment, and imagining if they are doing this for people that they will come out in a couple of days, what are they doing really to the Palestinians? And then you speak to politicians, and they are surprised and shocked that Israel is treating people this way. Why? I think the problem is not in terms of like how Israel is using the propaganda. Israel has accused us of being terrorists. Israel says that this is a pro-Hamas flotilla. Israel says that this is a tourist flotilla, no? And at the same time, we see that this is not concentrated within Israel, and we have to acknowledge that what Israel is doing is a method that is being applied by every oppressed country to criminalize and dehumanize people who are trying to expose the truth. And we see it in the UK. People are being accused of terrorism because they are practicing civil disobedience. So this behavior is the nature of any oppressor. Any oppressor government will practice that. What we have managed to achieve is this propaganda does not stop people from mobilizing, and it proves by action what lies and what claims Israel is pretending to do. At this point, honestly, what governments are doing is the main factor for all the things that we are seeing. And there is an important element that we also need to pay a little bit attention to, is how Israel tried to fragment the Palestinian cause in the storytelling. Like, when was the last time we spoke about the Palestinian refugees? We have been talking about the settlers, we have been talking about the prisoners, the genocide in Gaza. And then at some point, they aim for people to forget the root of what has happened in 1948, what has happened, before 8 years, and let's focus about what's happening today. And this is not the first time that they have done it. They have done it in so many times in the second Intifada, during the invasions of Jenin refugee camp, when they have bulldozed all the houses over the people living there, and this committed massacres and ethnic cleansing, and they just continue doing it all the times. When they surrounded the Muqata in Ramallah, the headquarters of the Palestinian Authority, the hundreds and hundreds of people who were killed in the old city of Nablus, they continue taking those moments of creating a specific event that will take our concentration. And what scares me more, honestly, at this point, after 3 years of genocide, after the atrocities that we hear about the Palestinian prisoners' treatment, is the limit in Spanish it comes our humanity, how much we are able to handle. Like, the genocide did not stop, but we have been exposed for 3 years into extreme violence that somehow in our mind, to be able to survive, killing 5 and 10 Palestinians every day is better than killing 100 and 200. So we can live with that death. I think this is where it is really impacting our time right now, more than the Israeli propaganda. The Israeli propaganda is for civil society, it is a proven failure. Like, they have dedicated $750 million this year to try to clean their image again. But there would be no human being that they can forget what has happened. The main cause of what we deal with is the complicity. How did Western media rush to claim that Palestinians were raping and killing kids in the 7th of October without seeing any picture, without having any proof, nothing? Let's just adopt this version of the story and promote it. How politicians continue. I mean, yesterday, one of our colleagues in New Zealand was accused a liar by his own foreign ministry for the torture and treatment that he received from the Israeli authorities. That is the type of complicity that is leading the European Union, that is refusing to stop the association agreement because they believe that Israel is a democracy and is promoting human rights. So we continue our fight in activism because we understand that this is the just route that we have to go forward. But I believe today more than ever that our struggle as Palestinians is an ethical compass for the struggles around the world. And this complicity that is expanding in the UK, in Germany, in France, and in many countries is converting those governments, and not from afar away, as active partners in crime, as active partners in genocide. And they are starting to bring these policies to their own people. So people now, activists, people, humanitarians are persecuted in France, are persecuted in Germany, are persecuted in the UK, are persecuted in the US, and this will continue expanding. And the fascism that Dr. Mustafa spoke about that is spreading in the Israeli society. I have been going to Palestine every year before 7th October. This time when I was arrested, I have never seen such hatred as this time. It is so fundamental within their soul that when they look at you as a Palestinian, as an Arab, they only see your death. They don't see any other alternative. One of the investigators told me that they tried to do as any other occupations around the world. They tried to kill everyone in Gaza, but unfortunately they were only able to kill 100,000. And this is the version that they believe that should happen. So within looking at Palestine within this propaganda campaign, I think our path is to act, to continue mobilizing, and to try to bring true joint struggle while maintaining the Palestinian cause in the center of what we do, connecting to it to the other struggles, because this oppression and persecution is becoming a collective one against all of us and not only against the Palestinians.
Hatshirana, I want to bring you in here because as part of this discussion, why did we get here? How did we get here? I think there is an important point to discuss about double standards and how the international community values certain lives compared to others. Now, I talked about that Ben Gvir video in which and it was very, very horrifying behavior. However, most of us have seen far worse footage coming from out of those prison walls, and they have not provoked the same kind of international condemnation. What does it say that it was your video that broke through, and how relevant do you think that is to the reason Palestinians are still suffering today?
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that we have many years of these videos of Ben Gvir going around Israeli detention centers, Zionist detention centers, and humiliating Palestinian prisoners, doing far worse, showcasing far worse than what was showcased in terms of those participants in the flotilla. That we have testimonies of Palestinian political prisoners, hostages, speaking about how they had IOF coming into their cells, beating them, torturing them, tasing them in the genitals, taking videos for Ben Gvir. And yet that doesn't spark the outrage. And it barely gets seen. And then one video comes out, sent out by Ben Gvir, of us, and it's humiliation. I mean, they don't show the beatings that happened. They don't show the stabbing, the shootings, the sexual abuse, the rape that happened. It only shows humiliation and, a little bit of physical violence. And yet, that was what sparked all of this outrage. It sparked actual action from many governments around the world. And you can have the optimistic view where you say, part of the strategy of the flotilla is that we are regular free people of the world coming together to take action, that brings forward some sense of community, that it could be your neighbor, it could be your friend. And so it elicits a different type of response, which can be human. But we need to acknowledge that's not the heart of it. The heart of it is centuries of institutionalized, systematized racial inequity, white supremacy, decades of intentional dehumanization of Palestinian lives, and normalization of Palestinian torture, Palestinian suffering, and abuse. There's also a gendered aspect to this, where so many of the testimonies that come out are violence, sexual abuse, rape being perpetrated against men. And we have this idea that it's less damaging, it's less harmful, it's more normal that men go through physical violence, that men go through sexual violence. And yet it's unacceptable, no matter who the person is,
no matter what their background is, no matter where they are born. This should never, ever be acceptable. So we need to be proactive in our responses. We need to make sure that we make a concerted effort never to allow that normalization. And we need to go beyond what's happening with our social media platforms, where we know the algorithms will promote the abuse of white-bodied people over the abuse of brown-skinned people, of Black people, of Palestinian people. So we know that there is this Zionist and racist system out there internationally that is controlling the information that we get and what we are taught to care about. But ultimately, it's our governments that have the responsibility to be taking action here. It's our governments that are enabling the impunity of Israel to continue the genocide, to continue the apartheid occupation. And it's the governments whose response was mediocre, even when it's their own citizens that are going through these abuses, let alone those of the Palestinian people. And so this is where we need to be pressuring all together our political leaders to actually step forward and uphold international institutions that do still exist, even if they haven't been upheld for many years. So I think this is where there's absolutely hypocrisy at the heart of it, but where we can identify that, show that, surface it, we can start to question it and challenge it, and inshallah make change.
And so finally, on this question of how did we get here, those governments, Tayyab, why and how have world leaders allowed Israel to achieve this level of impunity on the international stage?
I mean, it's by design, I think, and I don't think that. Look, I'm gonna sort of declare an interest in something. I represent Karim Khan at the ICC, and we all know what's happening to Karim Khan, and it's important I say that because I've seen inside the political beast, and notwithstanding whatever one might think about what he might have done or might not have done. The fact of the matter is, and it's important to say, it's been widely reported that a judicial panel decided that there was no misconduct. And the political bureau has recently referred this on back to the or onto the ASP because they disagreed with that. Now that's interesting, but having seen, and I have to sort of keep much of the details confidential, but the one thing that I can say about that process is that if you think for 1 second that the attack on the ICC, be it the sanctions, be it the investigation, the way the investigation is being carried out, has anything to do with anything other than the arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu, then I have a very small but very expensive bridge to sell you, because for me it's very simple. What I can see happening in that institution is that those warrants are very much at risk of being removed by design by the United States and by Israel, but also by the diplomatic political actors within the ICC that are doing bidding, which I can't discuss today, but I'm sure at some point we'll be able to make that clear. So how we got here, I say it's by design. There's a lot of money at stake here. The military industrial machine makes money out of what happens in wars, what happens to the Palestinian people. Israel makes money by testing its weaponry on the Palestinian people. It's in a lot of people's financial interest to make sure that the status quo is happening. Now, not just that, I mean, I'm going to just give a list of what I think has caused this. Diplomatic shielding. There is no doubt that, on our panel, you heard the opinion, the position that politicians don't know. I'm telling you, they know, because I sit with them and I talk to them and we discuss this. And when they act like they don't know, it is an act. They are pretending. If somebody as unlearned as me knows what's happening in Gaza, I can tell you political leaders in the West and in the global South understand what's going on because they have intelligence services, they have advisors whose job it is to tell them what's going on. They know exactly what's happening on the ground in Gaza, exactly what's happening in the prisons and the detention centers of Israel. But they decide, for a reason which we can discuss, to protect that colonial enterprise in that region. And they do that. So that's one reason we've got here. I've already mentioned the arms and trade machine, but there's also the fact that there's trade agreements between states and Israel. And it's a two-way trade agreement. It's not just that we sell to Israel the machinery of warfare. We buy technology from them, which we use to suppress people or control people or spy on people or control our populations in the West. And also we use potentially to develop war machinery for ourselves in the future. I've developed an allergy over the last couple of years, and I'll tell you what that is. When I'm scrolling on social media and I come across a political post and it has the word concern in it, I'm sorry, but I have to skip over that because it makes me feel very ill. The next time a politician tells me that they're concerned about what's happening, I think I might actually physically slap them. Because and that probably is a threat, and it probably has to stand by that. But the reason I say that, I'm not really going to slap anybody. Don't want to get into trouble for that. But the reason why I say
You are allowed to slap one.
I'm allowed to slap one. Thank you. Mustafa, I'm going to his get out of jail free card and all that. But the reason I say that is because if you tell me that you're concerned, I can understand it. Because you're an ordinary individual. You don't have an army, you don't have a foreign minister, you don't have the ability to sanction, you don't have the ability to actually put tools in place to show what that concern translates into. And that's one of the key reasons why we are where we are. Israel has been gifted complete impunity from any kind of accountability for any kind of wrongdoing, absolutely 100%. I've been working on this file as a lawyer, on this file on the Palestine issue and the Israel-Palestine issue for, I don't even know now, nearly 20 years. And I will tell you, there is no issue with evidence. The evidence is there. There is no issue with law. The law is there. There is an issue with political will, and I'll put it at this level, corruption in our political class to maintain the status quo. That's why we're where we are.
So what should be done? ICJP is recommending sanctions against 62 Israeli lawmakers to the UK Foreign Office. What are those? What will they change?
So you have to understand what sanctions are. Sanctions are really an important tool. Sanction is a step down from effectively taking military action against the state. And you see how effectively they were deployed with regards to Russia and in the Ukraine situation. And so what a sanction is meant to do, it's meant to translate that concern we spoke about into action. And it demonstrates to a foreign state that, look, we don't like the way you're behaving. We can't do anything about it physically, but we can do this in a really proper symbolic take this symbolic action, because what this will do is it'll infect your trade, it will affect your banking, it will affect your relationships, it will affect your ability to progress because you're not aligned with our values. And so what you do, or what a state does, is when it finds that another state is acting outside of its value system, is it issues sanctions. It says you can't behave like that. You have to correct your behavior. When you correct your behavior, then we'll carry on doing normal trade with you. And so it's a very important tool for a state to use. If a state isn't issuing sanctions, then it tells you that perhaps their values are actually aligned with that misconduct, right? And that's something to actually keep in mind. Now, what ICJP did on the 27th of April is we submitted a recommendation to the British government to issue sanctions for the 62 Knesset members that voted for the murderous death penalty law in Israel. And that's something really important. The grounds are very strong. The grounds are violations of right to life, the right not to be tortured, and they fit within the UK's already pre-existing sanctions framework. And what it would change, it would send a strong signal to Israel about what it's not prepared to do, but not just to Israel. It would send a strong signal to other countries that this behavior is unacceptable, outside the rules-based system, outside the values of the United Kingdom, and should be outside your values too.
Good.
Now on to the wider context. It is not just this law. Israel's use of the prison system to violently subdue Palestinians is rapidly increasing. Before October 2023, 5,000 Palestinians were held in detention. That number has since doubled. Most of them are held without conviction, half without any trial at all. Fatalities are increasing. The UN has verified at least 87 deaths in custody since that time. The real number is likely to be much higher. Khalid, will you paint a picture for us of what the day-to-day reality is like for prisoners under these conditions?
يعني منذ 7 أكتوبر منذ أكثر من عامين وإحنا نقلنا نحن محامين حلقة الوصل ما بين الأسرى وما بين العالم الخارجي آلاف الشهادات والقصص التي أصبحت تفوق كل المنطق والخيال. أنا أعمل في هذا المجال منذ أكثر من 17 عام. لما أتخيل أن أستمع إلى شهادات تفاصيلها صعبة وأحيانا لا أتجرأ أن أتحدث بها، ولكن أصبح هذا واجبنا نحن المحامين الفلسطينيين الذين نزور الأسرى أن ننقل للعالم لكم ولكل إنسان في هذا العالم ما يمر على الأسير الفلسطيني داخل السجون الإسرائيلية، وأخص بالذكر أسرى قطاع غزة الذين يعذبون بأبشع التفاصيل. وسوف يعني أسمح لنفسي أن أشارك الحضور بالألام الذي يمر بها الأسير الفلسطيني منذ أكثر من عامين.
I've been a lawyer working in this field for over 17 years, and I've never imagined myself hearing such testimonies with such difficult details from Palestinian detainees. Even some testimonies that I don't actually dare repeat the details of to the outer world. But because the lawyers have now become the connection between what is happening inside of these really detention facilities and the outer world, it has somehow become our duty as lawyers to tell the world what these detainees are actually being subjected to, especially the detainees of Gaza, the people from Gaza who are detained behind prison cells. So I will narrate to you some of these testimonies right now.
يعني مع بداية الحرب على غزة إسرائيل قامت بإنشاء معسكرات سرية من أجل اعتقال الآلاف المؤلفة من قطاع غزة، وهدفها فقط الانتقام من أهالي قطاع غزة، من المدنيون بالأساس من قطاع غزة. يعني لسوء حظي وحسن حظي في نفس الوقت كنت أول محامي أقوم بزيارة أحد المعسكرات السرية الإسرائيلية، معسكر ازداد تمام في صحراء النقب. يعني لسوء الحظ من في نهاية المطاف أنا إنسان مثل كل إنسان في هذا العالم، لا أستطيع أن أتحمل ما استمعت وشهدت بأم عيني مما يمارس بحق الأسرى. ولحسن حظي أن أنقل لأحد الأسرى وهو صحفي يعمل في التلفزيون العربي، أسير فلسطيني، كل التفاصيل الإيجابية التي تتعلق بعائلته أنهم على قيد الحياة.
Okay. So since after the 7th of October, we've seen Israel establish Israeli military camps exclusively for the detention of people from Gaza. And the main purpose of these military camps where these people are detained is to take revenge and vengeance on the Gazan population. Now, both unfortunately and fortunately, I was one of the first lawyers that were able to visit these military camps. Stateman is one of them, and I was able to go there and visit. And the things I've seen, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm only human. And there are details that I cannot believe that I've witnessed and seen. So that's unfortunately for me. But fortunately, I am able to relay to you the things that I've seen. So, and also to relate to the detainees themselves some of the positive details that their families are alive, for example, and they're waiting for them.
في هذه الزيارة استمعت إلى تفاصيل جدا صعبة. ومحمد عرب الأسير الصحفي محمد عرب وصحفي التلفزيون العربي، استمعت إلى شهادة جدا صعبة ما زالت ترافقني حتى هذا اليوم بتفاصيل. أعتقد أن هناك في إسرائيل أشخاص فقط هدفهم وظيفتهم ابتكار أساليب تنكيل وتعذيب بحق الأسرى الفلسطينيين داخل السجون معسكرات الجنش. تخيلوا حياة الأسير الفلسطيني في هذا المعسكر، أن كل أسير يعيش في حيز معلم وهو عبارة عن دائرة يرسمون الجنود لهم للأسرى دائرة مخصصة وهي دائرة صغيرة. هذه الدائرة يبقى الأسير فيها على مدار أيام أشهر، وهناك أسرى منذ أكثر من عامين موجودين في داخل هذا الحيز الشخصي.
So I'm going to be speaking about the testimony I've received from Muhammad Arab, who is a detained Palestinian journalist from Gaza, and he was a journalist for the Arab TV. This is a very difficult testimony that lives with me until today. But before we get into the details of it, and there in the detention facility that he's at, there are people in Israel that it seems to be their only job to find heinous ways to treat those detainees and be creative in how to humiliate them. So imagine in state man, every detainee lives in a small designated personal space. And what this means, what this means is that there's a small circle that is drawn for these people to live in, and there have been people that haven't been able or allowed to leave that small circle that has been drawn to them for over 2 years now.
في هذا المكان يبقى الأسير مقيد اليدين والرجلين ومعصوب الأعين على مدار اليوم. في هذا المكان يأكل الأسير، في هذا المكان يصلي الأسير، وفي هذا المكان الأسير ينام وهو بوضعية الجلوس بدون أن يسمح له النوم بشكل طبيعي مثل أي إنسان في هذا العالم حتى لو هو أسير.
In this designated area that we've just spoken about, the detainee is blindfolded, handcuffed, and this is the only area where they're allowed to exist. The detainee eats in that area, prays in that area, sleeps in that area. When the sleeping position is while they're sat, they can't even sleep properly like any other human being on this earth.
يعني تخيل أي إنسان أن يبقى مقيد اليدين والرجلين على مدار سنوات، ولا أبالغ في هذا الأمر. ولكن كان الأصعب في هذه الزيارة أن أستمع إلى تفاصيل تتعلق، أحيانا لا أتجرأ أن أتحدث في هذه التفاصيل، والتفاصيل تتعلق باغتصاب أسرى، باغتصاب مسنون، باغتصاب أطفال، باغتصاب رجال، ممرضون، أطباء، ناس عادلون من قطاع غزة. ولكن الأصعب كان أن أستمع أن عمليات الاغتصاب تتم من مجندات، من إناث، من نساء مجندات يبلغن من العمر 18 عام و19 عام يقومن باغتصاب رجال.
Imagine that any person would be in this designated area, blindfolded, handcuffed, and also their feet tied for years. This is not an exaggeration. This is actually what has been conveyed to me. This is what I know from the testimonies of these people that I sit with and represent. There are also details that are relevant to those detainees. And again, I mention I don't even dare admit or speak about because they are so difficult to talk about. Details about the rape of these detainees, the rape of men, of children, of elderly, the rape of doctors, everyone. And what is more striking is the rape that is happening from female Israeli soldiers that are only 18 or 19 years old, raping these men.
إن هل أحد في هذا العالم يعرف أن مجندة إسرائيلية تقوم باغتصاب أسرى رجال بواسطة الهروات والمسدسات؟ ولكن هناك وسيلة أخرى، يعني حتى الآن أحاول أن أستوعب أن تكون مجندون إسرائيليون بإحضار مدفأة الحرائق حمراء اللون التي موجودة في المطاعم وفي المجمعات، وتقوم أحد المجندات بإدخال خرطوم هذه المدفأة إلى مؤخرة أسير مسن، ودخل المادة الكيماوية بداخل أحشاء هذا الأسير، وإبقاء على هذا الحال دقائق معدودة، ومن ثم إعادة الأسير إلى داخل الدائرة الحيز الشخصي الذي رسم له ومجبور أن يبقى به. وبعد ساعات هذا الأسير لاقى حتفا. أنا حتى اليوم منذ عامين أحتفظ بهذا اسم الأسير لنفسي. لم أخبر عائلة هذا الأسير لكي لا أمس مشاعر أهل الأسير المسن يبلغ من العمر 70 عام، ومات بكل بساطة هذا الأسير بسبب عملية الاغتصاب.
This is difficult even for me as I'm translating this. So trigger warning for everyone in the room. there is quite explicit details that I'm going to be saying. So if anyone needs to step out, I'm just going to give you a minute. What I'm talking about is, can any of you in this room or in this entire world imagine that there are female soldiers that are raping men with the use of sticks and guns? There's this story of a detainee that I have kept for over 2 years to myself. I didn't even tell his family because I wanted to spare their own feelings. This female soldier brought a fire extinguisher and she used the hose to rape him with it. She kept it inside of him for a few minutes and then kept him to the designated place where he was supposed to be. This detainee was 70 years old. He lost his life after that. I haven't dared to tell anyone this story, specifically his family, and I repeat that. Can you imagine that a 70-year-old man passed away after being raped in this way?
هذا الأمر لا يقتصر فقط على اغتصاب الرجال، إنما على اغتصاب النساء. هناك حالة وثقت من أسيرة من قطاع غزة تم اغتصابها في السجون الإسرائيلية خلال مكوثها عدة أشهر قليلة. خلال أسبوع تم اغتصابها 4 مرات من سجانين إسرائيليين،
صوروه.
وتم توثيق هذه الحالة بجوالاتهم. فهذا الأمر الفظيع أن السجانة والمجند الإسرائيلي والمجندة يقومون بتوثيق العملية الفظيعة السادية وتداول هذه الفيديوهات بينهم من أجل التهكم والضحك على أجساد الأسرى والأسيرات داخل السجون الإسرائيلية. والهدف هو أن يكون بانتزاع إنسانية الأسير الفلسطيني. هذا فيما يتعلق بموضوع الاغتصاب.
There's also the rape of women in Israeli detention facilities. There's this case that has been documented in detail, and I can tell it was documented by PCHR because we all read that documentation while working in it. It was the case of raping this detainee woman from Gaza. She was raped 4 times in the course of 1 week by Israeli soldiers, male soldiers, who also documented their rape on their phones and their devices, and were laughing and mocking that woman and her body and the rape that they just conducted. The entire main goal of this entire policy of raping Palestinians and mocking them and documenting the rape on these devices is to take away their humanity, to treat them as if they're not humans. So these are the testimonies I'm going to be speaking about when it comes to rape.
منطق الطب في هذا العالم هو منطق إنساني أخلاقي وقائي علاجي، ولكن إسرائيل لا تتعامل بهذا المنطق مع أسرى قطاع غزة بهذا المنطق الإنساني، ما بمنطق آخر كأداة للتعذيب وتنكيل الأسرى. هل أحد يعرف أن إسرائيل تقوم ببتر أطراف أسرى أيدي وأرجل بسبب القيود الحديدية على أيادي الأسرى وأرجل الأسرى لأشهر؟ هذا تسبب لتآكل اللحم. فالبديهي أن نعالج الأسير، أن نقدم له العلاج، ولكن كان الوسيلة التي قام بابتكارها من أطباء وممرضون إسرائيليون وأن يقوموا بكل بساطة ببتر أطراف أسرى. ولكن كان المفاجئ لي أن أسمع أن هذه العملية تتم بدون تخدير الأسير. الأسير يمر بعملية جراحية ببتر أطرافه بدون تخدير. من منا لا يذهب إلى طبيب الأسنان في أول خطوة، والتخدير من أجل أن لا يشعر بالألم والوجع. ولكن إسرائيل تتعمد أن يعاني الأسير وأن يبكي الأسير وأن يصرخ الأسير وتبتر يد الأسير أو رجله.
The concept of medicine in this world is to be preventative, it's to treat injuries. However, medicine, that is the human logic behind medicine. However, medicine is being weaponized in Israeli detention facilities. It's being weaponized as a tool to further the torture and the degradation and the heinous acts against these Palestinian detainees. I'm going to be speaking about the amputation of these detainees' limbs, which I've spoken about in my first answer. Can you understand that because of the handcuffs, because of the metal cuffs that these detainees are subjected to and they have to live with for years, that they cause your meat to eat itself, your skin, and the normal obvious thing to be done is for them to receive treatment for what has happened to them because of these metal cuffs that are not being removed from their bodies. However, the method that Israeli doctors and nurses have created and come up with was to amputate these limbs instead of treating them. Now, this is not the worst of it. These amputations happen without any form of anesthesia. These people are fully aware when their limbs are being amputated. And to an ordinary person, all of you go to the dentist. I don't think any of you can imagine having any procedure done on you without anesthesia. So imagine this being a deliberate policy of not only amputating your limbs for no cause or no reason, other than doing it to torture you and degrade you and to cause you deliberate pain.
أنا لا أتحدث عن خيال، أتحدث عن واقع يعيشه الأسرى الفلسطينيين. هذا الأمر لا يقتصر فقط على أسرى قطاع غزة، ولكي لا أطيل الحديث، ولكن هناك أيضا أسرى الضفة الغربية، القدس، أسرى سوريا، أسرى لبنان، يعانون نفس المعاناة. وأريد أن أعطي أمثلة صغيرة يعني أمثلة سريعة. جئت إلى هنا وقمت في الأسبوع المنصرم بزيارة العديد من الأسرى في السجون الإسرائيلية. الأسير القائد مروان البرغوثي، واحد منهم زرته في عزل معتقل نفحة، وزرت الأسير محمد عرب في معتقل النقب، وأسرى آخرين. مر أكثر من عامين على الحرب، نتخيل هذا العالم أن أسرى موجودون في نفس الملابس الداخلية منذ أكثر من عامين. أسير فلسطيني لم يبدل ملابسه الداخلية وهو الأمر البسيط منذ أكثر من عامين، ويبقى في نفس الملابس، يستحم ويلبس نفس الملابس بدون إعطائه أي ملابس أخرى. هذا مرة واحدة يستحم الأسير. أسرى لم يأكلوا منذ أيام، كل عدة أيام يأكلون مرة واحدة. أسرى يأكلون نفس وجبات الطعام، الفطور، الغداء والعشاء منذ عامين وأكثر. أسرى مرضى، وتتعمد إسرائيل أن يبقى الأسرى مرضى بدون تقديم العلاج، وبالذات الأمراض الجلدية في داخل السجون الإسرائيلية.
I am not speaking about imagination. This is unfortunately the reality that everyone is, that these detainees are witnessing inside of these detention facilities. These are not only the detainees that are from Gaza, these are the detainees as well from the West Bank, from Jerusalem, from Syria, from Lebanon. All of them are going through these hideous conditions that I've just spoken about. I am here today in London, but last week I was visiting many detainees, amongst them Marwan al-Barghouti in Nafha detention facilities. He was in solitary confinement. Also Muhammad Arab in Negev detention facility, and many others. Can you imagine that these detainees have been in the same underwear for over 2 years? These people shower, these detainees shower, and then wear the same underwear that they've been in 2 years. The simple human right to be able to wear new, clean clothes, to change your underwear. They also are only allowed to shower once a week.
For 1 minute.
For 1 minute. They haven't eaten in days. They've been eating the same meals, if anything, if food is provided to them, for over 2 years, the same food. This is a deliberate policy against these people. And there's also the other policy of not treating any medical conditions or illnesses, specifically when it's dermatology related, when it's, skin related. Israel is deliberately denying these people access to medical treatment.
الوزير الفاشي بن كبير هذا الوزير المجرم مع بداية الحرب على غزة بدأ يتحكم بالسعرات الحرارية التي تقدم بوجبات الطعام للأسرى، مع تقرير وجبات الطعام وسوء الطعام بطعام الذي لا يكفي القطة حسب ما يرويها الأسرى، يقدم لأكثر من أسير أو أسيران يتقاسمون الوجبات القليلة والسيئة، والهدف هو أن يبقوا على قيد الحياة، أن يموتوا موت بطيء، وكل العالم يشاهد يوميا كيفية أشكال ومناظر وملامح الأسرى الذين يخرجون من السجون الإسرائيلية يفقدون عشرات الكيلوغرامات من أوزانهم، والهدف أن يتسبب للأسرى الألم والوجع والجوع، وله تبعات هذا الأمر.
Fascist Israeli Minister Ben Gvir, with the beginning of the war on Gaza, started controlling the calories that detainees were allowed to consume. And that translated into minimizing the meals that they were receiving and also deteriorating meals that they were also receiving. So the meals were increasingly getting worse. According to the detainees that I've spoken to, the food that they received is not even enough for a cat. And this food is provided, the food that is not even enough for one cat, is provided to multiple detainees, and they all share it. And the purpose of this policy is to keep them alive, but to have them die a slow death. And for the entire world to see the way they look like when they are released from these detention facilities, to see that they've lost tens of kilograms. And the entire purpose of this is to cause deliberate pain and deliberate starvation of Palestinians in detention facilities.
هذا عدا التنكيل اليومي والاعتداءات اليومية والإهانات اليومية التي يتعرض لها الأسرى منذ أكثر من عام. يوميا يتعرض الأسرى للتنكيل والضرب والقهر والأذى، وهناك أسرى سقطوا شهداء نتيجة التعذيب المباشر وإعدامهم داخل الزنازين المغلقة.
This is all as well in addition to the daily violations and insults and degradation and torture that these detainees are subjected to on daily basis. And it is important to note that there are a lot of detainees that have been killed, they've lost their lives, they became martyrs inside of these detention facilities because of these policies, because of the torture, because of the degradation.
وأختم بنقطتين حول ظروف الأسرى. الأسرى منذ 7 من أكتوبر عام 2023 معزولين كليا عن العالم. إسرائيل لا تسمح لأي مؤسسة دولية وعلى رأسها الصليب الأحمر بزيارة الأسرى، لكي لا يكشف مندوبي الصليب الأحمر هول المعاناة والألم والتعذيب والتنكيل الذي تمارسه إسرائيل بحق الأسرى. وحتى اليوم لم تسمح إسرائيل لأي مؤسسة حقوقية بزيارة المعتقلين. وهناك حادثة حدثت معي منذ عدة أيام بزيارة الأسير الصحفي محمد عرب في معتقل النقب، ودونتها عبر منصة إكس. هذه المرة الأولى الذي يطلب مني أسير أن أوصف له شكله وملامحه بعد عامين من اعتقاله بسبب حرمان الأسرى من المرآة لرؤية أشكالهم وأنفسهم وتعابير وجوههم وآثار وأثر الاعتقال على ملامحهم في نهاية الزيارة. وهذا كان السؤال، وهذه أثقل أمر ممكن أن أمر فيه خلال هذه الفترة، أن يطلب مني أسير، أن يطلب مني رجل أن أوصف له شكله وملامحه. حاولت أن أجامل هذا الأسير وأوصف له إيجابيات التي رأيتها به، ولكن على الرغم من كل هذا أنا أعترف كنت أكذب على هذا الأسير، وملامح هذا الأسير لا توحي بالإيجابيات. هو منهك، متعب، مضروب، تهور شكله منذ أن بدأت أن أتابعه منذ عامين إلى الزيارة الأخيرة التي حصلت منذ أسبوع.
And the last 2 points I would like to end my speech with is since the 7th of October, the detainees are completely cut off from the outer world. Israel has not allowed any international organization, including the International Red Cross, to visit these detainees because it does not want the world to see and to know and to document what exactly it is that it is doing inside of these detention facilities. And there hasn't been any other human rights organization, international one, that has been allowed to visit these international detainees. And then on a final note, I would just like to mention something that happened to me in one of my recent visits with a detainee called Hamad, which we've spoken about in just a minute before. And I've also written about this specific incident on my X platform. This detainee asked me to describe to him what he looked like because he hasn't been able to have access to a mirror for over 2 years. And he wanted me to narrate to him what he looked like because he hasn't been able to see his face and how the torture and degradation and the lack of food has impacted his features. And as a lawyer, this was very heavy because I had to lie to him and tell him that there were things that looked positive in his appearance. And I wasn't able to tell him that his appearance reflected lack of sleep, torture, that since the 2 years that I started following up his case and became his lawyer, his appearance changed drastically and deteriorated. And that is a very difficult thing when a man asks you to describe what he looks like because he wants to know if it reflects what he's been through.
إن هذا جزء بسيط من آلاف القصص وآلاف الأوراق من الشهادات التي وثقتها أنا شخصيا والعشرات من المحامين من أساليب التعذيب والتنكيل التي ما زالت تمارس حتى اليوم ومستمرة بشكل فظيع.
And this is all just a tiny fraction from the thousands of documented testimonies of these detainees that I'm narrating to you, and also a tiny fraction of all the practices that are being implemented and weaponized against Palestinian detainees in Israeli detention facilities.
Khaled, thank you for being the mouthpiece for these people. I have to say, I think on this section, there's not a huge amount that can be added. Those testimonies will probably be the most important thing we hear tonight. Saif and Katrin, I'll leave that at your discretion since you have both been up close in the system recently. Is there anything that you want to add to that picture just before we move on?
I don't think whatever we went through is compared to these testimonies. I would leave it with those testimonies, to be honest.
In that case, I think that the next question we need to ask ourselves is, why are we failing? Because we have here representatives of both grassroots and top-down systemic activism, but we have to admit that we are not winning this war, and Palestinians are enduring the results of that. Tayyab, beginning with you, why are we failing?
You know, after listening to those testimonies, a lot of the work that we do is recording these kinds of testimonies at ICJP, and we have over 150 at least. I don't even know how many now, but over nearly 200 probably now testimonies, which don't say exactly the same thing. I mean, these were harrowing, but equally or also harrowing testimonies. And the reason why I start with the testimonies is because I want to take issue with your question, actually, in the sense that you're saying, why are we not winning? And I don't agree, actually. I think we are winning. And I think that the reason it feels like we're not winning is because of the response to us actually starting to win. Now, let me just frame this. It's never easy to fight evil, and we're fighting evil. And if you think fighting evil looks nice and easy, and you can go to a judge and the judge goes, hey, yeah, I agree with you, or you can go to a politician and it affects that politician personally, financially, then yeah, I mean, you might win. What I've learned as a lawyer in the last few years is that there is a bandwidth of acceptable legal fight. If I fight from here to here, I can win easily. And there's the government, the judiciary, the world actually allows you to fight, and you can live your entire life in that bandwidth and think that the judicial system, the legal system is beautiful, phenomenal, and will answer all your problems. But the truth is, where evil hits is outside that bandwidth, and it's supported by people that are complicit in that evil. And that's when even taking the most simple legal case or taking the most simple public stance has massive ramifications for you. That's why you can say something perfectly legitimate and proper and be accused of being anti-Semitic. That's why you can go be in your hospital as a doctor, wear a badge and lose your job. That's why I've said repeatedly in interviews that I don't expect to end my career as a lawyer because of the work that I do, notwithstanding the fact that I am ranked in directories as a leading lawyer, but I completely expect that at some point, just because I'm fighting that evil within the legal system, it will become personal for me soon. I completely expect that. Now, why do I say we're winning and not losing is this, and I made a list while people were talking. Never before have I seen thousands of people across the globe turn out on the streets week in, week out, because they recognize that the Palestinians are being subject to a genocide and war crimes and crimes against humanity, and they understand and recognize the testimonies that you've just heard. Social media has mainstreamed what's happening to the Palestinians. It's acceptable. Everybody knows it. My kids talk to me. My kids are not interested in politics, know what is happening to Palestinians in Palestine. When have you been in a room like this where you can hear brave people relay testimonies of other brave people in detention? The fact that governments are banning direct protest organizations as terrorist organizations is because they're fearful of what those organizations represent. The fact that non-Palestinians, non-Muslims are being prosecuted as criminals because of standing up against genocide is a sign that we're winning. Juries across this country, the United Kingdom, are not convicting where the central issue is something to do with speaking out against genocide. They're acquitting or not being able to make a determination. This is new. This doesn't happen. Even when the framework is terrorism or supporting a terrorist organization, this is a sign that the tide is changing. The flotilla, that's a sign. Look at the size of the flotilla. That's a sign that people are mobilizing. The ICC arrest warrants, these were hard fought arrest warrants. That's a sign that we're winning. It's a sign we're losing if we let them fall away because of what the ICC is doing to people inside the ICC, what the United States is doing inside the ICC. There is a genocide case at the International Court of Justice about the behavior of Israel, a genocide case. That's not a small thing. That's a sign that we're winning because it took guts for a state to risk itself and stand up and say, well, actually, we think this is genocide and the world needs to do something about it. States are initiating sanctions regimes against people in Israel, the recognition of Palestine, and most importantly, and most significantly, the isolation and labeling of Israel for what it is, a fascist colonial enterprise. These are signs that we're winning, but don't think that the fight is going to be easy. That's why it often feels like we're not winning, but we are winning.
Thank you. Mustafa, you've been a lifelong advocate for non-violent resistance to occupation, but when the state weaponizes the law itself as a tool of violence, how does that affect the case for, or perhaps people's commitment to, non-violent resistance? Talk to us about non-violent resistance today.
I never said that Palestinians don't have the right to resist in all ways. And I've always said that frankly and bluntly, especially that all other forms of struggle and resistance are justified by international law. And when I'm asked about that, I say you have to abide by international law. And international law allows you to resist in all ways, including military ways. When I speak about the power of nonviolence, I speak about effectiveness. What methods can be used in different circumstances and in different periods to be most effective. We know now that the Palestinian struggle is entering a new stage. In other stages, certain methods were used. Now, in this new stage, with all the complexities that we are facing, I do believe that popular resistance will rise again in the same manner like the first Intifada did, which was one of the most powerful and most excellent examples of mass participation of all Palestinian people in an uprising. And that's why I don't see I don't see a contradiction between one form or another, as long as the form we are using is effective, because at the end of the day, the goal is to be achieved, and the goal is freedom. And there is no contradiction between this form or another. Who could say that the flotilla is not an effective form? Who could say that the Intifada was not an effective form, or the marches of return and breaking the siege on Gaza? But I want to go back to the question about why we are effective or not effective on the issue of Palestinian detainees and hostages. No, I agree. We are effective. I agree we are not failing. Israel has never been so isolated, but it's not enough. And there are three things I want to mention here. First of all, in our activity, we have to understand that knowing something does not always mean realizing it. I'll give you one example which I use frequently. When you say that the genocide in Gaza killed 12 and injured 12.5% of the population, 12.5%, it sounds just a number. Apply it to UK when you speak about it. And you would be talking about 8.6 million people killed or injured. Apply it to United States of America, and you would be talking about 37 million people killed or injured in the course of 2 years. Do you know what Trump would have done if 1 million people were killed or injured in the United States? Probably he would have bombarded the whole world with nuclear powers. Raise the issue. I was once in an Asian meeting, and there were many people from India, which is, by the way, the second biggest supplier of weapons now to Israel. 24% of all weapons that came to Israel came from India during the genocide war. And I told them, apply 12.5% to India, you will be talking about 176 million people. So realizing what Khalid have just wonderfully described, and I really admire his work, is something you should make people realize. And that's why the way we use things, the way we work, has to sometimes be modified in a manner that makes it most effective. And that's why sometimes, in addition to telling the whole story, you have to pick up a case and present that case. Like, for instance, the case of Hind Rajab was presented in a very powerful movie. In my opinion, Hind Rajab, every one of you and me and everybody should every day say, especially to Jewish people and to the Western people, that what is the difference between Hind Rajab and Anna Frank? We sympathize with Anna Frank. We sympathize with those who suffered from the Holocaust. But you should sympathize with Hind Rajab, because the persecutor, the oppressor, the killer in both cases is the same. That doesn't matter what is it, Israeli uniform or German uniform. In both cases, it's the same crime, the same criminal, and the same victim. And I think that approach I mean, I think these cases that were just described, each one of them should become a story and should be advertised in the most possible way. And the target, the goal should be both media and politicians. They might run away, they don't want to hear sometimes. Media doesn't want to hear, and we have to use social media to bring them the attention to these cases. But believe me, if we work so clearly and so hard, we can make a difference and we can improve our ability to be effective. And that's why the red ribbon is important. Why the red ribbon is important? Because when you wear it everywhere, constantly, you make people ask questions. They will ask you, what is this? That's what I've done with the key here, which I wear since 2004. And in the beginning, everybody was asking me, what is the key? Is it the key to your city? And of course, I always explain this is the right of refugees, the right of return. And I'm so glad that so many other politicians are wearing it. Maybe it's fine, but it's good because now people know what it means. And that's why I think you have to look at the Red Ribbon campaign here as an instrument. When they ask you what is this, tell them the story of this journalist, tell them the story of this woman. This is how we can change the situation. This is how we can change the world. And I do hope you can find good artists who could create films about what was just described. Thank you.
And I think on that, everyone in this room should give themselves credit for not looking away from this issue, because that really is the first step. Saif, over to you. What would you say to anyone who says getting on a boat doesn't change anything?
Like auto promotion. I mean, what does change? When we enter into a mentality of claiming that we know the solution and we know the key to resolve the genocide, to end the genocide and the occupation, so why don't you go and do it? Like, if there is someone who knows what should be done to end genocide, what are they waiting for? The question, and this goes back to the success story, what, like, that if we are failing, if we are succeeding or winning. And I think it is important also to acknowledge where we are. And when I referred to the dangerous part of this genocide that is impacting our humanity, everyone who listens to these testimonies, who watch the testimonies of the situation in Palestine, the kids, the hospitals, the starvation, it just brings so much violence inside us. It brings so much anger. And the way that we process this anger and the way that we express it, sometimes it comes out on the people who are most close to us, on our comrades. So as two different organizations or two different militants that are doing two different type of activities, because we disagree, this violence turns us into enemies. So this solidarity space, instead of becoming a collective, inclusive space, we start to distract ourselves from the work that has to be done against this genocide, and we fight each other. We fight the sabotage that we sabotage the work that other people are doing. And I think while we are achieving and progressing a lot in the storytelling, in this fighting complicity because of the sacrifice that the Palestinian people are doing, we are also auto-sabotaging this work by egoism, by internal conflicts that makes no sense, by putting other priorities in terms of what we want to achieve other than the freedom and the end of genocide in Palestine. And if we don't be transparent with ourselves and really autocritic with this reality, I mean, just put out in your mind any city in any place and count how many solidarity organizations exist in that place and how many activities they are co-organizing together and how many strategies they are implementing together. And we can see the fragmentation that came into our spaces because we don't know where we throw this anger out. Like, what do we do with it? So, I mean, if anybody here has an effective strategy that other than flotillas, I'm happy to start organizing on that strategy. I think that the question is, and instead of saying, in an exclusive way, this works and that doesn't work, I say to you as a Palestinian, Palestine needs everything. Palestine needs cultural activities. Palestine needs people with the skills to make documentaries, to tell the stories. Palestine needs kitchens to organize food of hummus and falafel because they are trying to steal this culture. They are trying to steal our gastronomy. They are trying to steal everything in Palestine. And Palestine needs lawyers who organize cases. And we need those lawyers to work together because we are more powerful when we bring all those organizations so we can chase them. They want us to lose faith in international law. They want us to lose faith in our capacity to isolate and expose what they do. And we shouldn't give up on that. We should come together and become stronger in what we do. We need people to organize PDS. We need people to organize direct action and sabotage those military factories that are making us involuntary complicit in genocide in our own countries. We need to sell. We need to sell, and I hope that we don't. I have 3 little kids. The oldest is 8 years. And when I was arrested, it was the day after the birthday of my daughter. It was the first birthday I missed since she was born. And I definitely don't want to throw myself on a sailing boat that would flip in the first wave that comes in our face to go. But because what we do expose not only the genocide, not only the criminality of Israel, also it exposed the structural racism in our own system and the complicity that European countries who try to educate us Palestinians about human rights and about the respect and the defense, they'll go together as what Greece has done. And they go and they work with Israel to detain 180 activists and then kidnap people 700 nautical miles away from Palestine when they speak about a combat zone that is around 150 and 200. So to be more concrete in answering your question, we need everyone to act in all the spaces where they are. And we need, I totally agree with Taib in what you said. There is no way, I mean, in all revolutions around the world and all the fights for human rights, we would never have somebody knocking at our doors in Christmas and say, hey, have a box of rights. Enjoy it for this year, and then I'll come back after. Rights are to be paid for. And if we want to start this process, which is not only fighting for Palestinians, the repression is in your own backyard. It's not about what's happening in Palestine anymore. Israel has managed to expose violence and the practice of violence to every country and made it okay. Because what if a couple of people are being sentenced to 8 and 5 years? We have seen genocide and 70 and 80,000 people were killed. We can live with a couple of people being in the prison. We can live with German beating people out in the street because they are wearing a kufi. I mean, that's fine. 80,000 people were killed. They made our human sensitivity so thick that we need a nuclear war so we can mobilize again. And we cannot take that. We have to understand that the fight is here. That when we talk about complicity, when we talk about genocide, when we talk about the siege in Gaza, it is in our own backyard. And we start with the liberation, with the fight for rights in London so we can reach into Gaza. And that's what we need to bring together for us to fight this racism, this oppression, and this genocide, not only about what Israel is doing, about everyone that is enabling Israel to do it. So for that to happen, we need to understand 2 main facts. There is a price to pay. It is fine to pay that price if we want to achieve freedom. So we have to do it. And it's not a luxury to do solidarity. It's not whenever I have a free time. Oh, this weekend I'm fine. And instead of going to the garden, I might go to. No. Solidarity has to be a permanent act. You wake up in the morning and you say, what am I going to do today for a different world? And have a task every day in your life. This is where we start collectively fighting for our collective liberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Said. And Patriona, final word before we hand it over to the audience. You moved the dial diplomatically. What can you tell us about what does or doesn't work?
I mean, I think Saif said it very well. Everything has its place. There's no one thing that works. There's no one thing that absolutely can never work. It's about trial and error. If there's one thing that I can take away from that video is that we need to use every single moment, every single opportunity that we have. We need to use any moment of privilege, any type of capacity that we have to put our energy and focus into having impact. Because it's not about concern, it's not about condemnation, it's about action, it's about impact, it's about really making change. We look at what we see in the IOF in these detention centers. We look at the level of dehumanization that they project onto Palestinian people. But really, I mean, we're animals, we're collective people. Humans are collective. We are meant to be together. So as soon as you start dehumanizing somebody else, you're removing a part of your own humanity. And we can see that in the sadism that as when they're perpetrating this violence, when they're perpetrating these horrible, horrific acts, there's this sadism and joy, because as you start to dehumanize others, you're dehumanizing yourself as well. And so what we really need to do is build on critical education, critical thinking skills. It's such an important part of our democracy, because as soon as you start to go into that indoctrination, into those systems where you start to believe whatever somebody else is telling you, and you can go into that dehumanizing system, then we lose that part of ourselves that is able to claim our power to make change, which is why critical thinking skills are so core to the education systems that we need and the democracy that we need. There are so many ways in which Israel is not a democracy, and the lack of critical education, the levels of indoctrination, is just one example of that. So we need to claim our critical thinking. We need to educate ourselves. Every single one of us in this room, it's great that we're already here, but we can go further, we can learn more, we can experience more. There are videos out there, there are going to be moments that go viral, but it's about the consistency that we can bring to that. It's about having that daily intention. It's about choosing our actions carefully with strategic goals in mind. It's not just about one foot in front of the other. It's about, again, critically thinking, what am I doing and why am I doing it? What is my intention? Set a goal and work towards it. And bring other people together for that. Again, collectivity. We are none of us going to succeed on our own. It's only through collaborating with each other. And we know the most effective way to grow our movements, to grow solidarity, to grow allyship, and to increase our chances of success is to be bigger in numbers, to be more representative. So it's not about closing out others because we don't agree with them. It's about seeing, where do we agree? Where can we work together? And how can I bring more people with me? How do I bring my friends and family? You're here in the room. How in the future can you bring someone whose eyes might be opened by coming to a space like this? Joining a protest, going to a direct action, finding different ways to escalate for Palestine. What else is possible? What else can we do together? Because it's only if we broaden our imaginations, think critically, and act collectively that we're going to see all together the liberation of Palestine.
Thank you. Now that's our panel, and before we return for calls to action, I'm going to throw it open to the room. Please, will you raise your hand if you have a question? Please also specify who your question is for. Jeremy, do you have a question, or am I introducing Jeremy? Does Jeremy need an introduction?
So thank you very much to the panel for everything that they've said. And the fight for Palestinian people takes place in all kinds of scenarios all over the world. And so I know that you asked a, I think, slightly rhetorical question to Tayyip about saying, are we winning or losing? Obviously, the death toll, the destruction, the genocide, the evils of it are disgusting and appalling. And that is a total loss for the lives of thousands and thousands of Palestinian people. But in terms of the historic cause of Palestine, support for the cause of Palestine has never been stronger all around the world than it is now. It's because of the bravery of people in Palestine. It's because of the bravery of demonstrators around the world, and the fact that we can get close to 1 million people on the streets of London for Palestine. When I was first elected to Parliament in 1983, to mention the word Palestine would lead to a point of order saying, where is it? Does it exist? That was the way they behaved. There was a total arrogance and lack of recognition of any sort of it. Things have changed massively. Yes, we've got a long way to go. Of course we have. We all know that. But I think we have to be strong, be confident, and be utterly determined. We fight it in all sections. When we did the Gaza Tribunal, which Tayyip was one of the people that spoke at, as was Mustafa and others, it was, to me, one of the most moving experiences of my life, just to listen non-stop for 2 days at timed intervals, very detailed testimony of breaches of international law, breaches of human rights, disgusting behavior, etc., all of which is coming out in our book, which will be out in 2 weeks' time. That isn't going to change anything or everything, but it's building up part of that narrative. And so let's recognize that we can all educate an awful lot of people on this all the time. And it's become almost normal that young people now associate themselves with Palestine in the way that 50 years ago, young people associated themselves with the Vietnamese as the victims of the Vietnam War. And it's when we reach that sense of public understanding, at some point, the political establishments on both sides of the Atlantic are going to catch up. Parliament is light years behind public opinion. Every European government is light years behind what's happening on the streets around there. So let's have some strength, some hope, and above all, some confidence, and make sure that we never, ever give up on the Palestinian people.
Jeremy Corbyn. We'll start with the woman over here. Do we have a roving mic, or do you want me to run around? Okay. Is this what? This isn't working. Oh, it's okay. That's working.
Okay. I'm from PSC. I've got a question for Tayyip. I've heard defendants of the death penalty say, "Oh, well, it's only for the charge of murder." Is that correct, or is there, what is the baseline charge before the death penalty comes in? And would there be any possibility of them putting it onto minors that have been held in indefinite confinement and not been charged yet? Would they possibly be able to wangle that one?
I'm going to answer that in not with the statute, because the danger of in a situation where you are constructing a military tribunal, where you're constructing a process with fake evidence or improper evidence, it doesn't matter anymore what the charge is, because you can make that charge apply to anybody that you choose it to apply to without having a proper and fair process to determine guilt. If you are charged, you are going to be found guilty. So there is no point going through the legislation to say that it won't apply to this category of people, because if 99% of people are going to be found guilty of whatever they're accused of, and that's actually a death penalty, I don't think it matters anymore what the allegation is.
Thank you. I'm Linda Ramsden from ICAD. We dropped the Israeli from our name, by the way, because of the genocide. I have a question for you, Mustafa. You referred to the fact that there might be another rising, a nonviolent uprising. And can you explain more about that? Because my understanding is that the Palestinians are now so fragmented. The surveillance of Palestinians, the closures, the lack of freedom of movement. Palestinians are afraid. They're concentrating so much just on survival. Is there the capacity for that to happen? You referred to this, the possibility of an apartheid Palestinian state. Again, with all the annexation and what is going to be left of Palestine at all, because this is settler colonialism. And the goal of settler colonialism is achieved through genocide. We're now seeing this normalization. All the signs are in Hebrew, taking away the Palestinian Arabic identification, and so Israel's Judaized historic Palestine.
Thank you. But I first have to start by saying that the Palestinian people are not divided. It's some political leaders who are fragmented. but the public is not fragmented. And whether we talk about Gaza or West Bank or everywhere, some actions are fragmented for sure. We know the reasons for that. And for 20 years, I've been calling for unified Palestinian leadership because that's what people need. They need unified leadership. That's what we had in the first Intifada, where we had four people meeting in a room, issuing a statement, and it will be respected from the north of Jenin to the south of Rafah. That's what we need. There are many internal factors I will not go into, but I think your question leads me to the most important issue that we should speak about today. What does Palestine need from you? Look, everything you described, and I will not repeat it now or explain what's happening in the West Bank besides what's happening in Gaza, the 1,300 military checkpoints that fragment the country, the fact that the apartheid wall has taken away already 18% of our land, the fact that Israel is now imposing its control over 58% of the West Bank, the fact that they have built more than 500 settlements and settlement outposts, the fact that every day terrorist settler groups are attacking Palestinian communities 15 times every day, repeating what the Zionist terrorist groups like Haganah and Etzel at the time in 1948 did. The fact that they have displaced already 70 communities out of the land, but the people didn't leave Palestine. They moved from one place to another. They evicted now 3 refugee camps, Nur Shams, Jenin, Tul Karim. You're talking about almost 40,000 people. And now they don't respect any existing agreement. Oslo agreement is finished. They destroyed it. What you described is their effort to destroy the possibility of the so-called two-state solution. But who said that the only solution is two-state solution? And in reality, to summarize it, for me as a Palestinian who has lived through all these years and who at certain points thought maybe there will be a Palestinian state according to these parameters that they are proposing, I now realize that our goal as people is not just to end occupation. Ending occupation does not bring the refugees back. It's not only about ending apartheid. It's not only about releasing the Palestinian hostages. Palestine will be free for everybody only when we bring down the whole settler colonial project in Palestine.
Now we're running against the clock, so I'm going to ask everybody respectfully to get straight to your question and
just quickly 2 points, very quick.
you
I have to say that the biggest risk that it's very important for you to understand. This is the essence of everything. The biggest risk we face today is the possibility of ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in West Bank and Gaza. The Zionist movement will not succeed unless they displace us. If we stay with all the difficulties we face, they will fail. And the Zionist movement will fail. And that's why for you, and especially for Palestinians, wherever they live, the most important patriotic task today is to help people stay and survive in Palestine. And for you to make solidarity effective, you have to translate everything we spoke about into actions of boycott, divestment, sanctions, because only through that we can translate solidarity into material effect on Israel. Only by steadfastness on the ground and isolation of Israel through BDS, we can change the balance of power and Palestine will be free.
Ibrahim.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ibrahim Abul-Assad, and I'd like to start off by saying to long live our martyrs and power to every Palestinian under Israeli detention. In 2018, Dr. Maresi from King's College London spoke in this theatre, and he told me it's a form of ending Israel's occupation, as Iran's hypersonic missiles continue to hold the occupation accountable. And if you have time, do you have a message to the Western media outlets that are responsible in creating racist, false narratives that contributed to the annihilation of our brothers, sisters, and siblings, not only in Palestine, but also in Lebanon and across West Asia? Thank you.
Okay, point one, armed resistance and the right to it.
Short answer. Look, I will repeat. Palestinians have the right to resist in every possible form as long as they respect international law and what it says, including armed resistance. But who decides what form we use today or tomorrow should be left to the Palestinian people, who will decide what form they use and at what stage they use what. So I don't accept denying us resistance. Look, we had yesterday a talk at Oxford, and I said, I think it was published today, Adnan published it. When they speak about disarming Palestinians, they don't mean disarming us from weapons. They mean disarming us from the right of resistance in any possible form. And that's what we should not allow in any. On the question of what do we do with this media that is not behaving properly, my message to them, we will not rely on your morality because we barely find it. We will rely on our ability to embarrass you with facts and figures. Thank you.
Has the mic been given? Or yes.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to thank Khalid for sharing those true testimonies about our Palestinian brothers and sisters. This is very, very important, and I think it should really inspire every single soul in this room. So thank you for that. My question is, have you had Palestinian hostages directly say to you to not to continue to visit them because of the repercussions and the torture that they continue to face? And I just want to add a little bit more. Could you elaborate about children that are being tried in military courts in Palestine? Thank you.
I'm just gonna yeah. أولا أستاذ خالد شكرا لك جزيلا على مشاركتك هاي التوثيقات من الضحايا والأسرى اللي أنت بتزورهم. السؤال كالتالي: هل طلب منك الأسرى في السجون الإسرائيلية أن تتوقف عن زيارتهم بسبب التهديد و إذا بتعرضوا لأي رد فعل من سلطات الاحتلال؟ ولحظة. And also, what was your bit about the children? وشو رأيك بخصوص الأطفال اللي بيتم محاكمتهم في المحاكم العسكرية؟
طيب شكرا لحضرتك. يعني سؤال مهم. هناك آلاف الأسرى لم يخرجوا شهاداتهم وما تعرضوا له في سجون الاحتلال بسبب الخوف من التنكيل والتعذيب والضرب والموت. الأسرى يهددون يوميا بأي شهادة تخرج من السجون الإسرائيلية سوف يعذبوا ويقمعوا.
I'm going to translate this bit. There are thousands of testimonies that are not coming out from Israeli detention facilities because a lot of these detainees are aware of the repercussions and the threats that they're under if they do say these testimonies and relay them to the outer world.
في زيارتي لمروان البرغوثي رسالته الوحيدة أن لا تقدم باسمه أي التماس أو استئناف للمحكمة بأمور أساسية بحقوقه داخل المعتقل لكي لا يتعرض للتنكيل والتعذيب من المعتقل إلى المحكمة، لأنه يتعرض في حال يخرج من المعتقل إلى قاعة المحكمة سوف يضرب وينكل ويهان في هذه الرحلة.
In my latest visit to Palestinian detainee Marwan Barghouti, I was asked not to apply for any appeal or court order on his behalf for the violation of any of his fundamental rights because of his fear for the repercussions he might actually have to face on his way from the detention facility to the court.
بخصوص الأطفال يعني أكثر من 400 من الأطفال الفلسطينيين معتقلين داخل السجون الإسرائيلية، وهناك أطفال سوريين داخل السجون الإسرائيلية. أكثر من 50% من هؤلاء الأسرى الأطفال معتقلين بدون تهم، بدون محاكمات، بدون أي شبهات. وأنا أتابع أحد الحالات من الأطفال السوريين الذي تم اعتقاله منذ عامين وكان عمره 15 عام، والآن يبلغ من العمر 17 عام بدون محاكمة، فقط هكذا معتقل لأسباب غير معروفة. فإسرائيل لا تفرق بين الأطفال الكبار أو النساء. بالنسبة لإسرائيل كل فلسطيني أو كل عربي هو خطر.
Regarding the children question, there are over 400 children that are currently in Israeli detention facilities, and over 50% of those remain with no charges and no trial, and there's nothing against them. There is this case that he's been following for over 2 years of a child who was 15. He's a Syrian child. There's no charges against him, and he's currently now 17. So over 2 years of not charging that child with anything and just being held with no charge or in detention. And what he concluded with was the fact that Israel does not actually discriminate between children, women, or any detainee. Any Palestinian in the eye of Israel is a threat, is a risk.
Thank you, Khalid. One or two more questions, depending on how long they take. Got one here.
Hello, is this working? Yes. I'm Esme, I'm an activist in London. A question for Tayyip. You mentioned call for sanctions for the 63, I think, Knesset members who voted in this dreadful law. What can we do to make sure that, where can we find out more about the sanctions demand, and what can we do to make sanctions happen? Not only this, but further sanctions.
Yeah, with the specific ICJP sanctions that we've asked for, that you can find on our website. And also, if you follow our social media on Instagram and also Twitter, or X, whatever it's called, we regularly post updates about that. But I mean, I speak to a lot of politicians, and they really, really are hurt by your letters and your emails and your direct questioning. It really makes a difference to them. It does, because they don't like it, because it just blocks their inboxes, and then they have to deal with it, and they can't pretend. And I think in terms of sanctions, I think it's the only real way to make this happen is to make it the question for every MP at every point, every day, and penetrate their thoughts until they think the easiest way for them to have some peace is to actually get their government to put the sanctions in place. And I think that's the only real effective way to make this happen.
And the final question.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Thank you so much. This has been really amazing. I'm Samira. I'm from Community Camp Palestine. My question is mostly for the 3 Palestinians. Khalid, you're from the 48 area. Seth, you're in the diaspora just like me. And you, Dr. Mustafa, you are in the West Bank. And you have a long trajectory. We've often said that the Palestinian liberation, it's an endeavor of a lifetime. And actually, in our chants, sometimes we say, Palestine will be free in our lifetime. But sometimes it does feel that it's actually closer than that. Sometimes it feels that given how much disgust there is in the world about Israel and its actions, that has lost any credibility to the world. The Zionist movement is actually using all its tricks in order to be able to continue its work as it has done in the past. I'm sorry to translate that. My question is the following. Do you think Israel is about to implode from within? Are there sufficient fractures within that society that is going to lead it to its end?
Yeah.
She managed to ask.
On the count of three, you say how long it takes, and we say.
Just to make sure, did you translate the question to Ustaz Khalid? Okay, perfect.
Okay, I'll start. Look,
Just because he's the youngest.
yes. First of all, you have to understand the fact that the three of us are here together, and actually the five of us, it's a very good team, I think. We should repeat that frequently. And it's really complementary. I think that's the beauty of it. Usually you see five people on a podium and they compete with each other. On the contrary, here every input complemented. And the fact that we live, the three of us, in three different parts of where the Palestinian people are, is very important. I do believe that the key to success in this coming period is how do we create this complementarity between Palestinians in the diaspora in 1948 and in the occupied territories. This, we need to reactivate the unity of Palestinian struggle, of Palestinians wherever they live. And I reaffirm the goal now, with all the details, including, of course, the detainees, the goal is steadfastness, failing the Zionist movement, and boycott, divestment sanctions. This is the immediate, effective way. Now, will Israel implode from within? Israel is already suffering from very serious internal crisis. That's why they emphasize so much the issue of ethnic cleansing. In the last year alone, according to Israeli leaders, 80,000 Israelis left Israel. And these are the liberals, the artists, the doctors, the engineers, the IT guys. They're bleeding. For the first time since 1948, Israel has a negative immigration balance of minus 37,000. This is serious, but Israel will not change from within. They will not change from within. The situation will not allow a change from within. Israel will change only by external pressure, exactly like has happened to the South African apartheid system.
Now, I think it's important that we get to our calls to action, because today is here to discuss. We're here to discuss what do we do next. And as Saif said, we've got to get up in the morning and think about something that we can do to help. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists in 1 to 2 minutes to give us something solid that we can get up tomorrow and we can do. Katrina, let's start with you.
I mean, I think we need to understand there's no one right answer, of course. So it's understanding what are the skills each one of us has and how can we best apply them to the struggle for liberation. So maybe that's engaging in advocacy, contacting political leadership, contacting your representative, applying pressure, making it known that you're not going to be passive in the democracy that we are able to participate in. Maybe it's getting out on the street, raising your voice, taking action, making movement happen, being as loud as possible, as visible as possible. Maybe it's combining that with raising the storytelling, sharing the stories, the leadership, the narratives, the testimonies of our Palestinian brothers and sisters on the streets, online, in every single space that we are in. Maybe it's escalating into direct actions, breaking down the supply chain, breaking down the systems, directly challenging the complicity that our governments force upon us as citizens in so many countries across the world. So there's no one right answer, I think, and I can't give a specific direction, but just participate, escalate, engage, and be really noisy about it.
Thank you, Katrina. And now, Khalid, 1 minute, what can we do?
كالتالي أنا بعتقد إنه لا يمكن الحرب على الشعب الفلسطيني أن تستمر. الشعب الفلسطيني لا يمكن لوحده أن يواجه كل هذا الظلم. على العالم بالفعل أن يضع حد لهذا الإجرام المستمر، سواء بالسجون أو في غزة أو بالضفة الغربية. يعني أنا أعيش داخل إسرائيل، أتيت لهنا من داخل الأراضي المحتلة عام 48. هناك في صراع داخل المجتمع الإسرائيلي هذا يعني كان أوج هذا يعني الإشكاليات بين اليهود المتدينين والعلمانيين حتى يوم 7 أكتوبر. كانت هناك المظاهرات. هذه التظاهرات أوقفت بعد الحرب على غزة، ولكن باعتقادي أن هناك سوف يحصل انفجار من الداخل الإسرائيلي. هذا اعتقادي. أنا أعيش داخل إسرائيل وأرى وأقابل من المحامين والحقوقيين بعد الانتخابات يعني التي سوف تكون بعد شهرين من اليوم أو أكثر. سوف تكون هناك يعني حرب ما بين التيارين، التيار العلماني الذي يعتقد أنه من أسس دولة إسرائيل ومن يعمل ومن ينتج، وبين اليهود المتدينين الذين عمليا هم عبء، يعتقدون العلمانيين عبء على إسرائيل، وهم من أوصلوا إسرائيل إلى هذا المنحدر.
I believe that there's a war that is happening against the Palestinians, and a war that Palestinians cannot withstand on their own. The world really does need to end whatever is happening in Palestine, not just against Gaza or detainees, but also against the rest of the West Bank, against Palestinians in Israel, and against Jerusalemites as well, because the war is on all fronts. The other thing I wanted to say was that there's an explosion from within the Israeli society or community that is happening. Even before the 7th of October, there was these protests that were happening in the streets, and it was between the secular Israelis and the religious Israelis, and there were all these disagreements between them. And these have stopped in the aftermath of the 7th of October. However, I believe when it comes to the upcoming elections that Israel is going to go through, that this will happen again, that the secular Israelis who are now blaming the religious Israelis for the state that they're in, there will be an implosion from the inside of the state, and we will all see it.
أضيف بس من بعد إذنك داني. يعني كل حروب العالم انتهت، أو على الأقل هناك هدى، إلا الحرب على الأسرى الفلسطينيين 10,000 أسير. لا يمكن أن يقبل العالم الحر الإنساني الذي راعي لحقوق الإنسان أن تبقى الحرب على الأسرى مستمرة حتى هذا اليوم. فرسالة الأسرى: انقذونا من الموت المحتوم، من الموت المفروض علينا. فأخلاقيا وإنسانيا أناشد كل العالم بالفعل أن يتعامل مع هذه الشارة الحمراء، أن يقوم بنقل هذه الشارة الحمراء لكل العالم، على الأقل أخلاقيا وإنسانيا، أن نقوم بمسؤوليتنا مع هؤلاء الأسرى المظلومين الذين تنتهك إنسانيتهم يوميا.
All wars in this world end except the war on Palestinian detainees that has been ongoing for a very, very long time. The only message that Palestinian detainees have from their own detention facilities is save us from our definite death that has been imposed on us. And that's why he calls for everyone to talk about this cause, to wear this spin, and to be as much as active when it comes to this cause as possible.
Thank you. Saif, what should we do tomorrow?
Just in a minute, no?
In a minute, I'm warning you.
Well, I mean, in the abstract part, don't normalize repression. Whenever the system is coming hard at you, go back harder. Whenever they are trying to repress your voice, then make it louder, because your fight for your own rights within this global colonial system, it is a fight for Palestine. And we used to say that we sail because politicians and leaders are failing to do their job. And I think they are doing what they are designed to do. They are doing what they're supposed to do. The systems that we have today are based on colonization, are based on oppressing people and confiscating their rights. So take the fight here in your own home. This is the broader picture on something very concrete and simple. Every day, send an email to your own representative asking for sanctions on daily basis. Make this in the morning, in the night, send them an email demanding sanctions on Israel and isolation. And a second part for the co-living within the solidarity movement: every time you think that there is a group that is doing bad in organizing, go and do better. Don't take Sarasika. Just Just take action. If you think that there is something that can be done in a different way and you will be more effective around it, then please go and do it. As we said earlier, Palestine needs everything. So the time and energy that you will spend lecturing others, that they are trying hard, and you know that you are stronger, better, more intelligent than them, and you want to lecture them on how to do it, go and do it yourself. Thank you.
Great. Everyone emails tomorrow. Mustafa. Sorry. Okay, yeah. Tyra, in that case, I can see you've got a little list in front of you. So sorry.
I'm going to be very precise because I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to address the actual issue, which is the death penalty. So I have 4 things that I'd like you to consider, but I also have a pre-thing I'd like you to consider, which is don't actually slap a diplomat or politician because I said so. If you want to slap a politician or a diplomat, it's entirely your business. Okay, right. So number 1, make the sanctions happen. Really important. Look at our website, and I've already said it in an answer previously. Write to your MP, talk to your MP, talk to them when they knock on your door. You own the conversation. Tell them what they need to hear. It's crucial that they hear this repeatedly. Number 2, cut the lifeline. Demand a 2-way arms embargo between us and Israel and us. Number 3, really important, and I would say this because I'm the lawyer, back the legal fight with more than just applause. The challenges at the Israel Supreme Court, the universal jurisdiction cases, and at the ICC, they run on funding and they run on evidence, and the lawyers that are dealing with those are desperately in need of both. And just remember, when the lawyers are being attacked, then please speak up on social media about it, because they're being attacked because they're becoming effective. And it's a tell, it's an important tell. And number 4, and this is really something personal for me, and I'd like you all to do this, refuse anonymity. Numbers are easy to ignore. 9,600, 3,500, 350 kids. So what? Learn the names of 1, 2, or 3 individuals and carry them with you in every conversation with your neighbors, with your friends, at work, at home, with everybody. Make it personal. Say, did you know that this person was detained in this way in Israel and was treated like this? Make it personal. So please, tomorrow, get on Google, go on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI you want to use, and Google the names of the people in detention and carry them with you. And Adnan has made it easier because it's on the website of the Red Ribbon Campaign.
Thank you, Tyra. That is exactly what I was looking for. And now our final word, over to you, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti.
I think I agree with everything. I agree with everything that was said, but please concentrate. I mean, different people can do different things, but while keeping Palestine in your mind all the time, and Palestine has become the issue of of justice worldwide, and now it has become an internal issue in every country, and that's, I think, what Jeremy meant when he described the level of attention that is to Palestine. There was a time when Vietnam was the cause, but not as much as it is now with Palestine. There was a time when South Africa was the cause, but even that is not as much as Palestine is today. Today, it's internal political issue in the United States. Palestine was the cause of the success of Mamdani. Palestine was the cause why Kamala Harris lost elections. Palestine was the cause why Israel went after Slovenia to change their government. So please understand, and that's how I see it as Palestinian. Our struggle, for maybe the first time in modern history, people who are struggling for the freedom are fighting across the globe. The fight is not in Palestine only or in Britain only, it's in the globe. And that is the nature of what we face today. So please, the 2 things I told you about, whoever can support the steadfastness of the Palestinian people, push them. Whoever can participate in imposing sanctions on Israel because of everything they do, but especially to Palestinian hostages. Please do. These are the two main goals. Find ways, and let's continue this global struggle that is unifying all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, as soon as we're finished with this, we do need to leave the room, but we can do interviews or have further conversations outside. Surely before, I just want to give a huge thank you to all of our panelists. Yeah. Thank you to the International Center of Justice for Palestine and to the Red Ribbons campaign for getting us all here today and giving us something to do. As thank you all of you for making sure that this doesn't end here. Good night.